welcome back to the One Tree Hill Rewatch here on the Filmaholic channel. I'm your host, Matthew, and today we're going to be talking about the Season 4 finale, the last episode in the high school years of One Tree Hill. If you noticed, I went back to the headphones because the last video, I know the audio sucked. Sorry, didn't feel like wearing the headphones, and it was a mistake. But got them back, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Eventually, I do want to get a better headphone, or better mic, sorry. I have a mic for my computer. To give you a little backstory here, a little inside little story. I do have a mic for my computer that I use, so when I do videos on my computer, usually when I FaceTime, I use that. When I talk to Ethan, when I do my other videos, but when I'm doing these with the phone, it doesn't plug into my phone, so I have to use my actual, regular headphones, but eventually I do want to prove that, just give you a little inside story there. But you guys are here to listen to me talk about One Tree Hill, so that's what I'm going to do. The episode is called All of a Sudden I Miss Everyone, and it originally aired June 13th, 2007, and was written and directed by Mark Schwann. So I believe I'm pretty sure this is his second episode that he directed. The last episode was the season 3 finale. So at this point in the show, he's only been directing finales, and didn't spend the rest of the time, I guess, being a creepy dude or whatever he was doing back in season 4. You can go look that up and find out. Anyways, the show opens where the last episode picked up or left off. Haley's going into labor. Karen's, about to die, essentially. Dan's about to turn himself in. Picks up, has this awesome song playing, Lightning Crashes by Live. That's happening. Slow-mo shots. Love the slow-mo shots. Dan turns himself in. Great scene. He goes up, puts his hands on the counter, says, "My name is Dan Scott, and I killed my brother." The cop looks up at him in slow-mo, and you just see this reaction. Imagine that happen. Imagine being that cop, slow day at Tree Hill Police Station, and the mayor comes up and tells you that, flat out like that. Really good scene. Lucas gets the call that something's happening with Karen. He goes to the hospital. We have this awesome shot where Karen is being taken to the operating room, rushing her down the hallway, while Haley's being rushed into the room to deliver her baby. And Lucas and Nathan come, and they see each other, and they hug. And this awesome shot of them hugging, and then they go separate ways. And Lucas goes to the operating room to watch from the viewing room. Of Karen actually having surgery, I guess, at this point, or whatever was happening that they were going to be doing. They end up shocking her back to life, but Nathan goes with Haley to deliver the baby, which is James Lucas Scott, who will later be called Jamie in season 5 instead of James. I am curious why they named the baby James, what the purpose was, both creative side of things and characters in the show naming the baby James. Creative side of things, I wonder if part of it was James Lafferty, his name. I wonder if they took that into consideration. This goes to both creative side of things and in the show, was it Haley's last name, Haley James? Was that why they named the baby James? Or was it Haley's father, whose name was Jimmy James, so we can assume his name was James James, which is really stupid, but was the case. So did they name the baby after her father, which I also think is stupid because of the lack of her parents in the show, as well as some other parents that we will talk about, like the fact that Peyton's dad wasn't at graduation, that she said he would just meet her in LA because she's going out there soon. You're not going to go to your kid's graduation? Larry sucks. I mean, he didn't even come back when Peyton was attacked 2 times. And you can believe the first one, I guess, that she didn't tell him about the attack the first time, which doesn't really make sense because the attack was not only at his house, but she's a high schooler. The police were involved, so they would have contacted Larry. Unless she is 18, maybe. I don't know, but it was still at his house. So, yeah, you can... that's another thing you just have to go with, I guess. Maybe they couldn't get Larry back, or I don't know. I feel like you probably should have brought him back this season in some capacity, but they don't. One thing I really like about this episode, it wasn't just written as a season finale, because the last episode 420 was actually written more like a season finale, I would feel. This episode was written like a series finale. And that was great because it is the end of the high school years. And the next time we come back and revisit these characters is going to be 5 years in the future. So you don't want any cliffhangers. You don't want anything. You want to wrap everything up like this is the series finale. And honestly, if this had been the end of the show, like, I'm not saying in any way that I wish that it was, because then I wouldn't have got the rest of Dan's amazing storyline, and I would have lost a lot of things that I had from One Tree Hill. But if the series had ended with this episode, it would have been a good way to end it. Like, it was a good, really good episode. But Dan turns himself in. Haley has her baby. Karen flatlines and ends up having a dream or whatever while she's out. Sees Keith. They have a really good emotional scene together where she sees Lily older, and she gets the name for Lily from the flower that Lily picks up, and Keith says, "Look for me in the lilies." So she names the kid Lily. Interesting too, the same kid, and I'm glad they did this, the same kid that she sees in that scene being Lily comes back in season 5 to play Lily. I thought that was good. I'm glad they kept the same actress there. Brooke also has voiceover during these moments that's really nice. She picks up Haley's speech because Haley didn't get to finish the speech because she went into labor, and Brooke says those lines over the course of the stuff happening at the end of that part of the episode. And before we go to the 2 weeks later, there's also a shot within this of Brooke talking about being the person you're meant to be and all this, and there's a shot of Dan going into his cell and then shutting the door, and him looking out of the glass. I thought that was a really good shot. And then we go to the 2 weeks later. We're into the summer now, and we see Nathan with the baby. We see Haley with the baby. We see, obviously, we just get to see in this episode Nayli with their kid, which is nice, because this and one more episode in season 5 is really the only time we get to see Nathan and Haley with a baby Jamie. And we also see Deb with the baby, which is nice. And she looks after the kid in this episode. They're obviously, there's a party. Rachel has a party, we find out later. They're all going to this party, and Nathan and Haley go, but they're afraid about what has ever happened to Jamie, being left there with Deb, and they keep checking in, and it's really funny and sweet, and I'm glad they had that in the episode. It also picks up with Peyton calling Lucas that something happened to her car. Didn't really, she just was feeling sentimental, and there's a good scene of Lucas and Peyton together at their spot where they spoke for the first time. Although I don't think this is actually the same spot. I think it's different. I could be wrong. I think it's Greenfield Lake Park. I think that's where they filmed this stuff, because later in season 6, when there's a certain wedding, it takes place there too. But I think their actual spot, they actually did go back to in season 3 when she broke down, and Marcus came to help her car, or Nathan and Marcus came. That actually was the same spot, because there's a bigger space to pull over on the side of the road. In this shot, well, for one, there's water on both sides of the road in this shot, so obviously it's not the same spot, because there was only water on one side in the original spot, but there's also, it looks like just the road, so they definitely had to stop all traffic in this area for this scene, because otherwise it would have just messed up the scene many of times, I'm sure. Lucas and Nathan talk in this episode about visiting Dan and whether or not they want to and when they should. I guess it makes sense for this to have happened because they are brothers and they have this good relationship at this point. But, and this is something that we'll definitely talk about and explore as we go into the later years, Nathan and Lucas are always going to have different opinions of Dan and different paths with Dan, and their just relationship is going to be different, and their feelings on the situation is going to be different. I mean, obviously, Nathan's very hurt, and he's okay with the decision they end up making by the end of the episode, never to visit Dan and leave him by himself in jail. Nathan's okay with it. Lucas makes a suggestion, of course, but Nathan's okay with it at this point in the show. But Dan is Nathan's father. He was raised by Dan, and despite all the bad things despite all that, they still have that connection. Dan is Lucas's father biologically, but he was never there for Lucas, and they don't have that father and son relationship, and they never will. So as we go later to the show, I feel like that's explored more. I feel like part of Nathan not letting Dan into his life, and how he feels about it in certain scenes, certain episodes, is because of Lucas and him feeling that he needs to act that way because of Lucas. Which, ultimately Lucas leaves the show, and we'll get to that, at the end of season 6. And I feel like it still takes a long time, right, for them to, and Nathan's still, until it ends, when we get there, resistant about forgiving Dan. But certain little things, it's like, would have been easier if Lucas wasn't there, and I'm not, because he's always going to feel differently, and that's always going to affect Nathan, how Lucas feels about it. And I don't know why really Lucas would have ever, honestly, it makes sense for Lucas to feel that way. It makes perfect sense. But I don't know why Lucas would have ever considered going to visit Dan in the first place. I don't know what he would have said other than, I hate you. You killed Keith. I feel like there would have been more conversation with Nathan visiting Dan. But I feel like Nathan wouldn't know what to say, because I feel like he said all that he felt and still feels at this moment in the last scene that they had together in 420, which, by the way, was one of the best scenes in the season. I love the acting in it, both from James Lafferty and Paul Johansson, but especially Paul Johansson, and how it was written too, that Dan could not even look Nathan in the eye in that scene. But Nathan wanted to believe with all his heart that Dan didn't do this, that his father wasn't capable of murdering his own brother or murdering anyone, but that he would stand by him no matter what. And Dan can't look him in the eye and tell him the truth, and all he can do is just tremble, pretty much, with his glass of scotch. And that was a really good scene, and I feel like that was a good last scene for Nathan and Dan in this season before we go to them after high school years, and they have a scene again for the first time in 503 when we get there. But so they make a decision not to go see Dan, and then we also cut from that to Karen actually going to see Dan, and she delivers this great little speech about how she has a daughter, and that one day her daughter will ask what happened to her dad, and how she will look her daughter in the eye and tell her the truth and all of this. And it's just very well acted scene from Maria Kelly and Paul Johansson. And she spits on the glass, and Dan breaks down and starts crying against the glass as Karen leaves, and that's their final scene talking wise in the series. They do have one more scene together with Lucas in season 6 in the finale, which I've went back and forth how I feel about that, because they don't talk in that scene, and I wish that they did have some dialogue. But the fact that they don't, and the fact that they just look at each other in that scene, says a lot as well. So, but then we get after that. Shelley comes back in this episode, which is a bummer, because I don't like her character. I don't think she was written well. It's not for me. But I do like Mouth, and it gives more closure to their relationship and Mouth moving forward, I guess. So that happens. They also have that really nice moment for the Spice Girls song, and all the characters dancing, and Shelley gets involved in that too, which I don't like, because it's like, you have been in one season for like a handful of episodes. Why are you in there with a bunch of the other characters? It's a small thing, but it just annoys me nonetheless. But I do really like about this episode, not just the Spice Girls thing, but also there's so many moments that they did where they had all the characters interact with other characters and give you just every like little scene that you might would have wanted from the character exchanges. Like there's a Brooke and Lucas scene of him showing her in the novel where he wrote about her and what she can be in the future. So Lucas fans, you get that. Mouth and Brooke fans, Rachel, Brooke fans, Brooke and Haley fans, Nathan, Lucas and Peyton. You get all these little moments, Lucas and Skills. Brooke is also made godmother of Jamie by Haley, as well as Lucas being made godfather by Haley. And this leads Lucas to making the decision to take the job that Whitey has offered him, to not only go to school with Nathan and Haley, but also to assistant coach the team with Whitey, which he takes. And so we know that those three will be going to college together. We also know that Peyton is taking an internship, and her and Brooke will be spending the summer in LA, which ultimately Peyton ends up staying there. We know when we get to season 5, she stays in LA, and Brooke ends up going off and doing her fashion thing and ends up moving to New York. But yeah, all of that happens. Really nice moments, really funny moments. One thing that I don't really know how I feel about is the mouth kissing Brooke thing. It's kind of uncomfortable. Like, if you wrote this episode now, definitely wouldn't be in there. I wouldn't have written this episode either. And it's you go back to the fact that Mark wrote it, and it's kind of cringe. I know that Brooke's character doesn't really care that Mouth kisses her, because it's not made to seem like she cares. But the fact that he just walks up and kisses her, because he's always had a crush on Brooke. But what's most cringe is what he says after he kisses Brooke. He's like, "I've always wanted to do that." Okay, did that give you the right to walk up to someone and just kiss them? No, definitely not. So, not a big fan of that. But we know Mouth's a good character, and those are little moments that, in terms of the show, I just try to get past and not let it affect how I feel about the particular character, because I think it's a little weird, and I think it's more than a little weird, but I just try to get past it for the sake of the show. But yeah, Brooke gives the diploma to Rachel too, so she ends up graduating. We spend time with Brooke and Chase in this episode as well, continuing their relationship and then actually having sex in this episode. But of course, they don't have anything in season 5 or moving forward. Their relationship's over past this episode. So, also Chase is just written very bland in season 4, just so bland. But then we get to the end of the episode, and some big things happen here. One, there's this ending montage of girls against boys playing basketball on the river court. They go to the river court after the party's over, or after they decide the party's over, because it's mainly about future generations now at this party. So they decide to go to the river court, or Skills brings up the idea. They go there, they start playing a game of each other. Slow-mo shots, them playing, music playing, and it's cutting back between these characters, new beginnings in their life, happiest moments of their lives. It's going back from that, shots of that, to shots of Dan in prison or in jail, ripping apart his sheets and then eventually hanging himself. But he doesn't die. He goes to hang himself, and while he's hanging, there's flashbacks to him killing Keith, and the sheets come apart. He falls to the ground, and just such an incredible performance from Paul Johansson of him crying in fetal position, in this jail cell, and whimpering, and it echoes across the jail. Like, oh man, just such an incredible scene. And a scene that's brought up again later in season 5 with Dan admitting to Nathan that he did that. And it's just so much about Dan and his character, and how the future of his character is going to be on the show, and everything that he's going to have to deal with, and his character's going to go through. His whole character arc is just so good in the show. But comparing, like, having that blended in with them playing that basketball game, I think is so great, because it's like their happiness and then his sadness and like his regret, and just mixing those two together, I think was beautiful. And then there at the very end, as the song's like sort of coming to an end, and the show is about to be over, Lucas and Nathan have a rematch And I love to because, I'm a big fan of the Rocky franchise. It goes a Rocky 3 style down here at the end of the episode. Rocky and Apollo at the end of Rocky 3 decided to have a rematch behind closed doors. And it ends with one of them throwing a punch, and it just freezes on that, which ends up becoming a painting, which I really won't. But yeah, it freezes on that. So this game between them ends with them both jumping up with the ball, and then it freezes, and you have this freeze shot of them two jumping. And I think it was a great shot and great way to end the high school years and everything that's led up to this point in the series. Beautiful. Just made me feel so many emotions watching, rewatching all this, but especially like that ending there was so incredible. Definitely one of my favorite moments too. So when I make this list, which I'm going to have to be working on here soon, about which will be the next video that I'll have up for you guys, is me and Ethan will be working on a video where we talk about our favorite episodes, favorite moments, characters, all of this. So thinking about those moments, like there's so many good ones, even though I think I'm not sure, I'm still thinking on it. Season 4 might be my least favorite season of the high school years because of some of the bad storylines I think that are in the season. There's so many great moments too, including this, but it ends with them jumping up. And we never know who won that game, if it was Lucas or Nathan, or if it was just a tie, or if it was a silly game and there wasn't really how far the game went on. Obviously, Nathan's the better basketball player, so he probably won. But you never know, because they came up in Creed and said that Apollo won that fight, and I don't believe that for a second. I think, at the end of Rocky 3, Rocky definitely would have won in a fight against Apollo, who hasn't even been fighting for years. But anything could have happened. I remember when this episode aired, after that scene, and it cut the black and everything, it came up, and instead of doing a preview for the next episode, obviously, it was the end of the season, so you weren't going to get a preview for the next episode regardless, but it came up and said the next time you see these characters, it'll be like 5 years later or whatever that they said, and like tease you and let you know that the show is doing a time jump and like try to get you excited for the next season. In this episode, obviously, like I said, it aired June 13th, 2007. Usually when they came back, it would be like September. So you would think that Season 5 would come back September 2007. Nope. Season 5 came back in January 2008. So this was the first time we had a huge time period between seasons. They did not come back in the fall like all the other shows. I think this worked. They do this twice in the show. They do this with Season 5 and with Season 9, which is the final season. I think this worked this time definitely because there was a 5-year time jump. So giving us that extra time away from these characters added to, wow, has it really been 5 years? Like, it's been so long since I've seen these people on TV. So I think that worked. I'm glad they actually did that at the time. I think that really worked. Also, when we get to Season 5, and this is something I'll talk about in those videos as well, there was the writer's strike. So Season 5 is the shortest regular season that we have, and it has 18 episodes, but it was supposed to be a full season like all the other ones, so, or the other the other 7 seasons except for Season 5. Season 9, which is the final season, has 13 episodes, so it's actually the shortest season, but it wasn't a full season. Like, it was supposed to be the 13 final episodes of One Tree Hill. But yeah, guys, that's Season 4. That's the finale. Next episode, like I said, we'll be talking about our favorites of the high school years, and then after that, we're going on to Season 5. Can't believe it's already here. All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.